Okay, so last time we started looking at what we call data structures. Now, I told you like data structures means there are various ways we can store data in a computer. And when we use Python, we need to store in different ways with different properties. So that's what we discussed last time. So under Python, we are going to talk about four different built-in data structures, which we call, there are many. Built-in means like when you have Python without having any external modules, you can have these four data structures. So lists, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. Although we learn these four common data structures, make a note that lists and dictionaries are very useful for you. The first data structure we looked at last time, we call lists, which we call it as an ordered collection of items. So last time we see how to store a list of numbers, but that this list could be anything. It could be a list of words, it could be a list of documents, it could be a list of images, it could be a list of videos and so on. And how do you identify a list in Python? Remember, if you have several values together with square brackets, then we can see it as a list. And the other property is once you create a list, you can add new items, you can remove items, you can search items, and so on. Therefore, we use a special term for this. We call this as a mutable data type. Right. And the example we have seen last time was a set of numbers. We look at how to print them as a whole list and how to print them using a for loop using one item at a time. And we use len function to get the number of items in the list. And then we use index, what we call it. I told you in Python, index start with 0. To get the first item, you can just say number list 0, assuming that number list is the list. Then we discuss two methods to add items. Append will add to the end of the list. Insert will add anywhere you want with the index. So in this particular case, so you say index is 1, which means you are adding 20 as the second item. And then we also discuss how to change items. So with the index, you can access particular item. And then when you make an assignment, it will change the item. We also discuss how to sort the items in ascending and descending. If you just use sort method, it will arrange everything in ascending order. But if you want to make it descending, then you have to have a reverse flag. You have to set it to true. Removing item also, we discussed two techniques. First one, use of del with the list and with the index. So for example, in this one, when you say del number list 0, we'll remove the first item. And if you want to remove something based on the value, then you can use remove. But make a note of this, if you have multiple values, it will remove the very first item. Finally, we discuss how to delete everything, which means they delete in the list. Right. So that's what we have discussed last time. And under that, we will also have, various methods. So I have listed here. Make a note of that. If you want to know more details, you can use help list to get everything about the list. But if you are interested in particular method only, let's say append method, then you can use list.append. Okay, so I hope we have covered up to this point. Right, let's start with a small exercise today. Let's try to do this exercise together, right? So the task is, I want you to create a list with this set of items. It's like a shopping list. So let's say this is shopping list, and let's have these items in the list. Can you share with me the answer for the first one? First point. Give me the command. How do you create a list to have these items in a list. So we won't have 4 items: apple, mango, carrot, and banana. So let me share my Python IDE. And let me have a new window. So that's the first one, right? So we are going to have, let's say, a shopping list. You can have any name you want. And within the bracket, we can have either single quotes or double quotes. Of course, we have to treat it as strings. Otherwise, Python interpreter might think this as variables. Mango and one. Okay, we have complete the first one. So that's the first one. Can you give me the answer for the second one? At the same time, I got some answers in the chat as well. Yes, 046 given me the correct answer in the chat. Minili also confirmed that we have to use inverted commas. Good. Okay. Right. The answer for the second one? Yes. How do you get the length of the list or number of items in my shopping list? What is the command?
Print len shopping list.
Exactly. Yes, we can use len 0475. Kularatna also given me the correct answer. So we can say print. Okay. Len is the method that we could use, the function which gives us how many items in the list, shopping list. Let me run this now, which will print it. Okay, so it says there are 4 items in the list. Good. Okay, keep on moving. Give me the answers for the next ones. The next one, we have to print items on the list. You can always speak to me or you can use the chat to give me the answer. Shall we try to answer the third point? Yes, I want everybody to try to answer the questions. And please share your answers in the chat session. Okay, thanks. I got the answer from 017. Yes, simply we can have 2 techniques. We can simply say print shopping list. Thanks for answering my question. So if you do in that way, we know that it will just print everything in the list. This is method number 1, right? So let me put some comments. Okay, let me say this is my create a list. Let me say create the list. And also the second one is length of the list. Third one, print item on the list. Good. So what about the fourth one? Adding rice. Yes, can you give me the command for adding rice?
Print shopping list, append, price.
Yes, good. Yes. Okay, so now you can see rice is added to the end of the list. So there's a question on how do you print without the quotes? So the only way possible to print it is, since you have asked the question, there's a question from 017, how to print without the quote. Yes. Right. Okay. Sorry about that. So to printing without the quotes, couple of possibilities. One is you can print as a list like this shopping list. Sorry, print shopping list. And remember, in this particular case, it will print as it is. So when you say as it is, the string will be printed with single quotes. So what you need to do is you have to print individual items. One way is you can use for loop. We can say for I in shopping list. And then we can say print I. So then you don't get any single quotes. But of course, if you want to, put it as, let's say, in a same line, okay, maybe you can update a bit. I hope you remember that we have an end and there is a slash in, which we called a new line will be added. So if you put in this fashion, what happens is it'll print as it is in a one single line. But then there's a problem because there's no space. So if you want to have a space, then make it this as a space. So which will put it like this. Or if you want to make it comma, then make it a comma in between, which will print like this. So I hope you got an idea. So if you just use print, it will print as it is, which includes the quotes. So if you want to remove the quotes, you have to print each item separately. So obviously you can use a for loop. But then again, if you want to make it in a single line, I used here, change how it ends. Usually at the end, it will print a new line. So in here, you have noticed that I have removed the end, or I have updated the end so that I get it as a kind of a list. Right. Okay. This is, yeah, it's good that you ask questions. Okay, next one. Print the list again so that we did it. Okay, what is the command to sort the list?
Print fruits, sort,
Exactly. So you can say, in my case, it's shopping list dot sort. If you don't use anything inside the sort, and if you print now the shopping list, you will notice that it'll sort in ascending order, which means in this case we have strings, so it'll print in alphabetical order. So we have apple, banana, carrot, and mango and rice. You see, it's ordered in ascending order since we have a string values. Okay, good. Yes, next one. How do you print only the first item? Yes, how do you print only the first item?
print fruits, zero in square bracket,
Exactly. So we have to use index. So shopping list within the square bracket, we put 0. 0 indicates the index, the location. 0 means is the first item. So which will print the first item. Okay, so you will see here now, it just print apple. Good. Let's move to the next one. How do you remove the first item? Last one.
fruits, remove apple,
Yes, that's one way to do is, of course, we can use a remove method, or you can use del, right? So both methods are working. So let me use del shopping list. I will put 0 here, and let me print the shopping list again. So if I do this, and if I run again, okay, you notice this time, previous one, we had apple as the first item. So you can notice that the updated version, so we have banana. Okay, so with this exercise, I hope now you remember about um, how to use list. And lists are very, very important. For example, we learned last time, drawing graphics. So you could use, use of various colors on this one as well. Right. So if you go back to, what we did last time, we have done, couple of programs. We have looked at how to draw them, some, colors, and I showed you, you can use it as a list to go through them. For example, the last program we did it last time, right? We have noticed that, okay, you can go through each and every item in the list, and then you can draw them separately. So those are like very interesting ideas that you can use. And that's the reason why you learn various different data structures as well. Okay, let's get back to the note again. So the next idea that I would like to discuss is about the nested lists. Now, what we have discussed so far is use of single items, or just a single list. But then again, if you, let's say, same shopping list, but then you need to also record the number of items you want to purchase. In this example, let's say in previous one, we say apple. Then we will say orange, right? But we don't say like how many items we want to purchase. So let's say that I want to have a new shopping list, but this time I want to have a number of items I want to purchase as well. Now, to represent this idea, what we are going to do is we are going to use another list, which we create a list and we put list inside. So that means list of lists, which we call nested list. So let me explain this with an example. So let me open up a new window. Okay, so I'm going to close this one. So let me open up a new file. Right. So the idea that I'm going to discuss is I'm going to create a list. I will say my shopping list. And initially I will say it's empty. And then I'm going to add an item. So adding an item, I will use append method. But this time I'm not going to just add apple, but I'm going to say how many apples I want to purchase. So what I'm going to do, the trick that I'm going to use, I will make it another list like this. And that I will add it to the list, right? And let me print this, print my shopping list. So let's save this. Let me put this as 43. Right. Now, what has happened? So let me run this. Now, if you run this, you will notice this time you have a list here. And within that list, we have another list, which we call 5 apples. Okay. Hope you got my point. Can you tell me what is the command I should use? Let's say I want to add 7 oranges. Can you give me the command for that? Add 7 oranges. What is the command that I have to use if I want to follow the same method?
My shopping list append orange, 7.
Yes, of course. So what we can do is I can say my shopping list and I can say append. Okay, what you need to remember is I will put as another list orange and then I will say 7. So the idea is now I have 2 items in the list. So let me print it. Right. 2 items in the list. You will notice that I have 2 print statements. So therefore I have the first one, we have only 5 apples. The second one you will notice I have 5 apples and 7 oranges. Okay, good. Right. Okay. Okay, now that we have 2 items in the list, can you tell me how do I access only the first item? Only the first item. Right? Right now we have 2 items, right? Remember, we said list of items, we said. So the items, we have list now. So how do you access the first list? What is the command? How do you access apple 5? Now we have 2 items in this list. Any ideas?
Print shopping list square brackets 0:7. No fun.
No, I mean, it's okay what you're trying to access, but I just want the first item. So it's the same. So for example, if I say my shopping list, good try, although you didn't get me completely. If I just say 0, you remember the 0 is the index, which means the first item. In this particular list, the first item is a list, another list, and what you get is apple 5. For example, if I want to get the apple within the list, then you have to get, so the previous one a list, right? So you have to put 0k. So when you say 0, 0 in this particular case, you will notice it will return us apple only. What happens? We have two lists. With the first index, we will access this part. When you say my shopping list, it will access this part. Then within this, when I said 0 again, it will access just the name apple. Okay, you got my point? Right. Now, can you tell me what is the command to access 5 here? If I use my shopping list 0, 0, it will access apple. If you follow the same fashion, if I want to access the number of apples, what should be the command? Yes? Anyone? I mean, always you can use chat. Exactly. We got the answer. You can use 0 and 1. Thanks. Whoever, gave me the answer. I can't find his registration number or name. So it should be my shopping list. 0 will give us access to the first list, that is apple 5. And we have to access the second item in that means 1. So which will give you 5. Okay. Similar to that, okay, now you can get this, right? Okay. Now I want to do something else. Change number of apples to 7. Okay, let's see something like this. Let's say I want to purchase the 2 items, 5 apples and 7 oranges. Later I realized that, okay, I want to purchase 7 apples. But right now we have 5. So how do you make 5 to 7? That was the question. In my original list of items I'm going to purchase, we have 5 apples and we have 7 oranges. The question I'm going to pose here is, how do you change the number of apples to 7? Right now it's 5. How do you make it 7? Just keep on trying. It's okay. You can make mistakes. We are here to learn. Exactly. 487 gave me the correct answer. But you don't need append here, right? So for example, it's like this. It's like this. We need to change 5 to 7, right? So what you need to do is y shopping list. We'll get 0, we'll get apple 5, and we'll put 1, we'll get 5. And we have to make it to 7. Just put 7. You don't see append. Append usually use in list when you want to add something new. So this is not adding something new. We are going to change it. So just the assignment is enough. So let's print this. Anyway, good try. We can say my shopping list. Let me run this, run module. Okay, you can notice that earlier we had 5. Now it has changed to 7. Okay, I hope you got the idea about changes 7, right? So the idea that I'm actually trying to explain in this part is how do you handle list of lists? The idea of you can have lists inside the list is a very, very important idea, right? One example is about representing matrices. I know that you might have already learned matrices in mathematics, and most of the time we use matrices to represent various things. For example, if you take an image will be simply, if you take like 2D, a single column image could be represented as a matrix. A data set, we can represent it as a matrix. So therefore, matrix representation is very, very important. So let's see this example. Let's assume that we have matrix. It's a 3 by 3 matrix, which means we have 3 rows and 3 columns. And we have 1, 2, 3 as the first row, 4, 5, 6 as the second row, 7, 8, 9 as the third row, right? So if you are using list to represent this matrix, we are going to make use of idea of matrices. Okay, so let me show you. I'm not going to create a separate file for this, but let me use this. Right, okay. So the idea is we will call any variable name. Let me say matrix, and then we will put it as a list. And each row we represent as a list. So 1, 2, 3, we put it as another one list, then 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9. So you can see it's a list of lists, right? You got the point, right? Okay. So if you print matrix now, you can notice what has happened. Hope you got me. Okay, now I'm going to ask a question from what you have learned from the previous. If I want to access the second row, what is the command that I have to use? So in this example, we discuss how to represent matrix as a list of lists or using nested list idea. So the trick that we have used is we have used a nested list, which means each row we represent as a separate list. Right? The question is, if I want to print only the second row, what should be my command?
Print matrix square brackets 1.
Yes, exactly. And I got the answer in the chat as well. So we can say print matrix, and within the square bracket we can use index. So 0 is the first one, 1 is the second one, so this one is 1 we need to use. So if you put 1, okay, we'll get the second row. Okay, good. Another question. If I want to access the middle element, which is 5, right? So that will be in the second row, second column. What should be the command to access the middle element in the matrix? Exactly. 17 gave me the answer in the correct answer in the chat. Yes, the matrix 1 will give you the second row. And now we have 4, 5, 6. And we need to access 5, right? So if you go with the index 0 and 1, so which means we can say 1 and 1, which gives me to access the middle element. And you notice that in this fashion, you can access any element in this matrix. A quick question. If I were to access 9, what is the comma?
Print matrix 2 to
Exactly. So we have to say print. We have to say matrix. 2 will give you the, the last line, of course. But then we need the last element as well. 2 will give you 9. Okay, good. I hope you got an idea. You need a little bit of practice, but I think idea is very simple. In this slide, what we discuss is how to represent matrices as a list of lists or using nested lists. There are smart way to do, like there are like modules like numerical Python, where it will be more efficient, especially when you work with very large matrices. But I think list also could be used. And in this example, we discuss how we can make use of nested list. 475 asks, can't we use 1, 1? 1, 1, again, remember, in Python, we have a special meaning of 1, 1. Okay, you can use 1, 1, of course. The question is, let me put that one. It's good that you asked. 475 asks a very interesting one. Let me discuss in the same place. So although we did it separately, like this, print 1 and 1, that means we did it separately. You can make it 1, 1. Actually, I'm going to use this after this. But in this particular case, you will notice that what has happened if you just use comma here, right? The idea that we are going to discuss under string, how do you handle them separately, right? So those ideas, I will come up to this. There's a way that we can access it. But in this particular case, we are using string values. But then we will discuss here, like 1, 1. I will come up in this point. Since we have not discussed yet, I'm not going to discuss. We can make it work with the commas, right? So 1, 1 to use, you have to use separate ways. So that's the idea with the here. So if you want to use the idea with the list, and how do you use 2 items, right? So in this particular case, the problem what we have here is it's different. We call subset of lists, right? So I'll come to that point today with a string and I'll come back to you. But if you represent it as a numerical Python or NumPy, then you can use it easily, right? Okay, with that said, let's move on to our next topic, next data structure. That's what we call tuples. So in tuples, very similar to list, which means it's again ordered collection of items. But remember, after you create the tuple, you cannot add, change, or remove items. We call it that it's a read-only list, right? So therefore, since you cannot do anything after creation of the tuple, we call it as an immutable data type. So the representation will be very similar, except we are using rounded brackets. So let's look at the example first. So you can see here, we call it number tuple, and we are using brackets here, right? So the rounded brackets or simple brackets represent the list is as a tuple. So this list of numbers is represented as a tuple, we call it. So you can print it, you can get the length, you can access items, but then you cannot add, you cannot change, you can remove. There's no method for that. So let me go one at a time with this. So in this particular example, so I'm going to use the shell here. I will say number tuple. And remember, we are using rounded brackets, so simple brackets here. So this is the indication whether it's a list or tuple. In list, we use square brackets, but in rounded brackets, indicates a tuple. So if you put it like in this way, then you cannot add anything once you created this, but you can print it. So the print command works like this. It be very same as previously, but you see the rounded brackets. And for I in number tuple, that means you are trying to access individual elements. That will also say no change. You can get the length same way. Okay, but there are no methods to add items, change items, remove items. Make a note of this. But you can access individual elements. So for example, it's same as previous one. If you want to access the first item, we can say print number tuple and we'll say 0. You cannot delete individual items, but you can delete the whole tuple. So that's what you see at the end. So you see delete, you can say del number tuple here. So make a note of this as well. Right. Good. Okay, just to summarize what we have discussed, there are other methods in tuple as well. If you want to know more details, just type help tuple, or you can type help tuple and dot with a particular method. And here are some of the list. This is not the complete list that you can use. But they make a note that you cannot add items, you cannot change any items, you cannot delete items separately. Right. Let's move on to the third one. Third one is very interesting. The set idea, I hope you have learned in mathematics as well. When you say a set, we don't specify any order, but it will have unique items. When you say unique, you don't have any duplicate values. Second point is you use curly brackets here. So if you say a curly bracket, hopefully, you will notice that it will be a set, right? So you have curly brackets and you have items comma separated. So then you are representing it as a set. Right. You cannot change, but you can add new items. Why you cannot change? Because you don't have a way of accessing element because there's no order. Right? So make a note of this. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So we have sets here. I'm going to use again the idle. So we'll create similar to that. We will say number set this time. And we have a curly brackets. So that's the first point that you need to remember. Then you can have anything inside. In this particular case, we are having numbers, which will create a set. If you try to print it, you will notice that there's no order. So order might be different, might not. But actually, there's no particular order specified in the set. So in my case, you will notice that we entered like 11, 2, 23, 45, and 15. In my case, it's represented 2, 11, 45, 15, and 23. Actually, there's no odd specified here. And same way, we can use for loop as well. If you use for I in number set, and if you say print I, it'll print each individual items. It'll print each individual items. Right. But you can add items. To adding an items, I will explain using two commands. One is individual items. For example, I can add individual items just using add. So notice, I can say number set dot add. And if I put 6 here, it will add it to the set. And let's print it. So we have 2, 6, 11, 45, 15, and 23. Again, it will be a random position. Similar to that, let's say we want to add a couple of items. The technique that we are going to use is we use it as a list. So let's say we are going to add 7, 6, 7, and 8 to the list. So what happens? Okay, sorry. It should be update. I make a mistake here. It should be update. So I will say update, and then if I put it as the list, so this will will be added to the set. But remember, 6 is already there. Therefore, it will not add it separately because already 6 is there. So therefore, this is the updated one. We add 3 items with a single command. And now we have 6, 7, 8, the 3 numbers in the set. Okay. So what you need to remember again, sets are unique values. You cannot, make any order here. You can add items. You can remove items as well, but when you say remove, meaning the delete, not to change, but you can remove. Remove, there are 2 methods. Since you cannot specify any location, we don't have indexes here, but you can use values. Now, for example, let's say I want to remove 6, right? So let me say number set dot remove. Let's say again 2, right? If I say 2, what happens? Nothing will happen. And if you print it again, right? It will print it again. You will see 2 is no longer in the list. If you try to remove 2 again, we know that the 2 is not inside the set. You will get error message. So make a note of about the remove method, that remove can be used to remove item in a set. But if the item is not there, you will get an error. So some cases this is problematic because if you get an error, your program breaks and you cannot continue. So therefore, sometimes we need methods which will not generate any errors. So that's why we have another method called discard here. So the discard method, what it does, when you give an item, it will try to remove it. But if there's if the item is there, it will remove it. If the item is not there, it will be silent, right? So let me show you another example. Let's try to print the set. We have number 6. So let's try to remove 6 using discard. So we can say number set dot discard. and I put 6 again. No issue. And you will also notice that the 6 is removed. If you try to remove it again, there's no complaint and nothing has changed as well. But if you use remove, then it will give you an error. So make a note of that. In sets, we have two methods to remove items. We can use remove or we can use discard. If you use remove, if the item is not there, it will give you an error. But in discard, there's no error if the item is not there, right? Last one, if you want to delete the entire set, you can say delete. So you can use the del command here as well. But you cannot delete individual elements with del because there's no index, right? We don't talk about indexes with sets. Right, okay. If you have understood up to this point, can you please raise your hands? If you have understood what we have discussed so far, we discussed 3 data structures: lists, tuples, and sets.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
So okay, numbers add වෙනකොට order එකටද add වෙන්නේ?
No, there's no order. ඒකේ order එකක් නැහැ පුතේ. ඒක random. ඒක Python interpreter එක තමයි ඒක design කරන්නේ. We don't have any control. So it's not an ordered collection. ඒක ordered collection නෑ නෙමෙයි. So it will be added randomly. Okay, thanks. Let's move to the next one then. Okay. The last one, again, a very important one, because this will come up again and again in various different places. The idea of dictionaries. If you go back to our first two data structures, which means list and tuples, we had an index. We had actually a numerical index. We use a number to determine the location. But there's a problem with this technique. For example, let's say you are going to represent data set. And if you want to access a particular column, and you need to know the location to specify the index, which is problematic. So therefore, numerical indexes are not practical in some of the problems, and we need values. So therefore, we can use dictionaries. In dictionaries, we have two values, or we have pairs. We call it key and value pairs. Key is like an index, but it's just not a number. Oh, you can have a number as well, which we can use key to access the value, right? I will explain. So just to begin with, dictionaries is similar to list and tuples. But then again, instead of numerical index, we have something called a key. So when you're representing something inside the dictionary, we have to always have two values. We have to specify a key and a value. Okay, let's try to understand this with an example. Right, now in this example, I'm going to actually, you know what happens in the dictionary, right? You search through some kind of the label, which you can find a value. It's like a dictionary. So to explain this idea, I'm going to use English as well as Japanese. So in English, 1 specified ichi in Japanese. 2 in English is represented in ni in Japanese. 3 in English is represented as san in Japanese. So the idea is this: whenever you want to access 1 in Japanese, you can use this key 1. It's easier. 2, 3, and so on. With the numerical indexes, you need to remember the location, what number to access that particular value, whereas you can remember this key here, right? So that's the advantage compared to list, for example. Okay, although I have separated these in several lines, you could have typed in a single line as well, right? So let me start. So I'm going to get the shell again. So I'm going to say number dictionary. And then again, here also, we are using square bracket. But difference is you have always have to have two values. One is key, we call it. The second one is value. Two pairs, right? Or two items. You have always two with colon in the middle. So the two will be ni, and the three be san. So it will be like this. So this is a dictionary. So if you print it, you will notice that it will be in a single line. That's why I said you could have typed in a single line as well when you're creating it, right? You got my point, right? So you see one ichi, two ni, three san. So the idea is you can use these keys to access the other values, right? If you just use print, it will print all key value pairs. In our case, we have three items. But then again, if you just use for loop, make a notice what will happen. If you use for I in number dictionary, we say number dict. And if you say print I, make a notice or make a note, it will print only keys. So we have three keys, 1, 2, and 3. So if you just use your for loop, if you try to use it for this time as well, it will print only the keys. If you need values, that means the second part, you have to type number dictionary dot values. You see the second part, the values, that is ichi, ni, and san. If you need both, you type items. You type items. So you have one ichi, two ni, and three san. Hope you understand the idea of dictionaries. Again, if I compare with the list, in list, what we have is indexes, and you have numerical index numbers. And sometimes this might be difficult. So therefore, we have dictionaries. In dictionaries, we have something called keys and values. So the first one will be key. The second will be the value, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, okay, values print on square brackets අතර නෙමෙයිද?
ස්ක්වයර් බ්‍රැකට්ස්ම තමයි පොතේ. මම එතෙන්ට එනකන් තාම ආවේ නෑ. දැන් මම තාම keys and values කියලා කිව්වේ අපි for loop එකත් එක්ක යද්දි. But let me explain that one as well. Right. So printing a length,
Okay, sir.
yeah. Printing a length will be same. So in our case, we have three items. Okay, now we got to what you have asked. So let's say we want to access the first item, right? So if you want to access first item, we can say number dictionary. In a list, we use 0, right? So instead of 0, now we are using this key. We say number dictionary 1, right? Ideally, we should use print. We say print number dictionary. And instead of 0, we will use the key here, which will access the value of key 1. So if you want to know, for example, 3, you just type 3, it will say sun. So you got the point, right? Now, this is very, very useful in many of the applications. Like I said earlier, if you put a data set, like, for example, let's say I'm going to represent data about yourself, and then I can keep your name, your index numbers, your addresses, and so on. Let's say I want to access your addresses. I can just say whatever the dictionary name and address, which will give me the address, right? So that's the idea. So it will be very easy in some of the applications. Right. Now, if you want to add items, so it's like you are trying to access an item. I will say number dictionary, and you say 4. And we know that the 4 is not in our list, so dictionary. And then we'll put up the value as well. So you got my point. So you provide the key and value like this. And if you print number dictionary, you can notice 1 ichi, 2 ni, 3 san, 4 yon. So you can say number dictionary. If you say 4, I told you, you don't use a number now, just use a name. In our case, we call it a key, and it will give us yon. Okay, now this is the next one. In Japanese, there are 2 ways you can represent 4. One is yon, one is she. So let's say I want to change yon to she. What I need to do is I will access this. Currently we have yon, and I replace with she, a new assignment. So if I do a new assignment and if I print it again, you can now notice that the key 4 has changed. The value stored in key 4 has changed. Earlier it was yon, now it is she. Next, if you want to remove, we can use del. We can say del number dictionary, number dictionary. Let's remove number item 2. We use key 2. So if I do this and if I print this time, notice that we have only keys 1, 3, and 4. That's all. Just to summarize what we discussed with dictionaries. Dictionary is like a list, but instead of a numeric index, we have what we call a key. So therefore, when we are creating a dictionary, we use curly brackets, but we have 2 parts. We have key and we have values. And it's easier, you can use these keys to access each individual elements, right? So that's the idea that we will use. So if you need to get the help of dictionary, you can just type help dict, which will give you more information about the dictionaries in Python. Right. Any questions up to this point? So now we have completed 3 other data structures. Last time we discussed lists. Today we discuss tuples, sets, and dictionaries. Okay, assuming no questions, let me
No, sir.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. You need the code? This one. Once you finish 17, just let me know. Okay, good. Right. Okay, I'm going to cover another related topic, strings. Now, so far we use strings, but one thing is very related to what we have discussed in data structures. Why I'm saying this? Because a string is a sequence of characters, right? Because string means we have characters, right? We have a sequence of characters. And the other idea is you can treat it like a list. Danuja, I have uploaded it and I have put up the YouTube link in the LMS. Can you just check? Yes, thank you. So we were discussing about the list strings. Strings, we can treat it like a list of characters, which means you can use index, right? But only difference of list is you cannot change like a list. So therefore, it will be we call immutable. But it's very interesting. So let me revisit strings, right? Okay, so let's say we have a string called dialogue. You can notice we have a single quote. I have put some spacing here just to elaborate this. So if you treat this as a list of characters, we know that we can use index. So for example, if you use 0, we can access D. If we use 1, we can access I, and so on. Why don't we try this? So let me take this, right? So it's like this. So I'm going to say S is, let's say, dialogue. And if I say S naught, you'll notice it's capital D. You can, since it's a sequence of characters, you can use index to access each individual elements. Okay, you got my point? Okay, can you give me the command to access G then? You can use chat if you want, or you can just tell me the answer. How do you access G then? You start with 0, 1, 2, and so on. So what is the command to access the last one? Okay, 17 gave me the answer. So if you start with 0, we have 0 here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So I can say it's 5. Good. So that's what we discuss. This is called forward indexing. We call forward indexing because we start from the beginning. At the same time, you can start from the backward. So this is called backward indexing. So in backward indexing, if you want to start from the backwards, so this will be -1, right? Then this will be -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, and so on. This is very, very important because let me show you. Now, earlier I have to count, right? Yes, I have to count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Without count, if I just say -1, because -1, we know it's a backward indexing, it'll give me the last element. You can directly access the last element. So you don't need to know the index. You don't have to count. Just say -1, give you the last item. First item 0, last item -1. It's easy. So therefore, depending on our requirement, we might use forward indexing or backward indexing. For example, I told you you can represent data set as a list. So if you want to access the last element in the data set, we can use -1. Last column in a data set, we can use a -1. Okay. So whatever we learn here can be applied into list as well, because here we treat it as a list of characters. I hope you got my point. Therefore, I can say if you want to access capital D in forward indexing, the index will be 0. Backward indexing, it will be -6. If you want to access G, for example, you can use S5 or you can use S-1. Right? This is very common usage, and you will get to know more details later on. Right. Any questions on this one? Are we clear about the forward indexing and backward indexing? Again, you can use it to list as well, right? Although I have not discussed at that point, you can apply the same technique with list as well. Okay, let's move on. Now that we have now know about the forward index and backward indexing, and we can talk about slices, right? So in a string, you can use similar to the way we have used range functions. In slicing means getting subparts of strings. We can use start, stop, and step. So that means we can get part of the string in this fashion. Let me explain. Okay, I'll go back to again this one. Right? Okay, so it's like this. Now, let's say I want to get the first 4 characters. What do you mean by first 4 characters? We know 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So if you use, let's say S, if you say 0, then D. If you use 0, 1, 2, 3, it'll be L. So let's say I want to access all the 4 elements. We can use start and stop like this. We can say S, start with 0, goes up to 4, not including 4. So remember, this is like start and stop, what we have discussed earlier. So when we have start and stop, so this is a range we specify, goes from 0 to 4, not including 4. So it will include 0, 1, 2, 3. It says that. Right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
සර් මේ ඔක බැක්වර්ඩ් ඉන්ඩෙක්සින් දානකොට ස්ටෙප් එක දාන්න ඕනේද? -1 කියලා.
ඔව් ඒ කියන්නේ මෙහෙම පුතේ දැන් මේකෙදි මම start and stop use කරනකොට assume කරනවා දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මේකේ ගත්තොත් මම මේක දාන්නේ නේ ඇත්තටම එන්න ඕනේ මෙහෙම. ඔන්න ඔහොම step එක. 1 කියන එක ඕනේ නැති නිසා 1 කියන එක කියන්න ඕනේ නැති නිසා ඒක දැම්මත් නැතත් එයා 1 කියලා ගන්න නිසා අපි කියනවා default හින්දා අපි මේක විතරක් දැම්මම ඇති කියලා කියන්නේ. Actually, you don't need to put 0
Okay,
as
sir.
well. You don't need 0 as well. Because if you just put 4, it knows you start from the beginning. So, for example, if you need first 4 characters, this is how we will use. Right? Okay, let me ask a question now. If I need the first 3 letters, what should be the command? The simplest command. If I need the first 3 letters. Yes. Exactly. 17 told me like, if you just say 3,
0 to 4.
we have to say 0 to 3, right? Because it will go 0, 1, 2 then. So if you need first 2 characters, this is how it should be. Right. But remember, this is applicable if you start from the very beginning, right? If you start from somewhere else, then you have to specify it. For example, if I want to say start from 3, 3 means DIAL. Start with L, right? 3 means. 6 is the last one, which means 5 is the last one actually. Then you have to put 6. So then this will be the last 3 characters, right? So like in previous fashion, you don't have to specify the last one. You can just say like this. It's like you start from the third index 3. So this is easier. For example, let me say S1. Let's say I have some arbitrary string, right? So knowing this, let's say I need the first 4 characters. Okay, very easy. And if I want the starting from the 4th one, if I need the remaining, I can use this. So in this fashion, it's very easy to work with. You can notice that I have separated this string into 2 parts. Okay, maybe I will give you another one. It says 2. I will take something like, let me put it in this way. So if I say S2, if I say like this, sorry. I made a mistake putting equal sign. And if I put this way, you will notice I have separated the string into 2 parts. First one, we say it goes up to the index 4. The second part will say, okay, starting from index 4. So, for example, if you use this representation, splitting a data set into 2 parts is very, very easy, right? You will notice this later on. Okay, coming back to slicing operations. So what we were discussing is use this fashion, and we have discussed the first one. That means starting from the beginning. So ideally, we can use this fashion. But then again, since you start from the beginning, you don't need that. Just you can see put in this fashion. Similar to that, if you start from the middle, goes up to the last item, you don't have to specify the last item. That's what we discussed. Okay, what if this then? If you have 0, 6, we are going to print start from the end. So in the same fashion, we can put like this. When you specify start and end, if you do not specify, if you just put the colon, that specify the whole string. So make a note of this, very important one. And when you refer codes, you might notice this, right? You might notice this. Right. Any questions up to this point? Now we have discussed 3 parts. From the start, from middle to the end, and handling the whole string. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so there was a question again from 17. What do you mean by 0, 4, 1? Okay, let me explain. 0, 4, and 1, meaning 0 means start, right? Index 0 means the first character. 4, it's a stop. So when you say 0 and 4, it means we start with 0, then 1, 2, 3. So we will have 4 characters, 0, 1, 2, 3. Remember, the step is 1. So that's why we get this dial. But what if I put this, let me change this. If I put 2 here, what it means? You start with 0, then you add 2. So that means 0, then you don't have 1, then you have 2, then 4. 0 to 4. It goes like this. So in our case, so the 0 is D, then 2 is A, and then you don't have any character. So therefore, you will get only D and A only. If you do this to whole string, I can put like this. Because S is dialog. And if you put 0, 6, 2, the step, that means 0, then 2, then 4. So that means 0 is D. This is 1, this is 2, then 3, then we have 4. Similar to that, if I put like this, if I put 1 here, can you guess what is the output? Now you should be able to. If I put S1 colon 6 colon 2, what is the output? Without typing this in Python.
ILG.
Yeah, you can try this. So because this says 1, right? So this is 0. So we don't have this. 1 is there. Then 3. A is not there. Then this is not there. You got the point, right? So it should be ILG, right? So let me enter this. We'll get ILG. Now you should be able to. So what is this then? S3, 6, 2. Can you give me the answer? You start with 3.
LG.
They should be LG, right? Okay, I hope you got the idea of how to use it. But then again, similar to this, if you have the last item, you don't have to. Simply, you can remove the last item. First and last item, usually you don't have to specify. So that's why I have removed it. You can do that. So it's always possible. Right? It's always possible. For example, now tell me, what do you mean by this? Any guesses? We don't specify start, we don't specify end, and we just put 2. What will happen?
EAO.
It says start from beginning, right? So it should be D, that is 0, then 2, then 4. So make a note of this, very interesting and very important, this representation. Okay, I now come to the last one. Okay, and if I put just this, can you tell me what this means? And sometimes people type like this.
I know.
Exactly. So when you do not specify anything, like 511 also answer the question. Good, thanks. And also 70 is also answer the question. Thank you. So you notice that this when you don't represent anything but just colons, and if you have 2 colons, the start is 0, end is the last one. That is, in our case, it's 6, and the step is 1, default values. Good. Right. Now, if you want to do something backwards, very interesting. So in backwards, if you put -1 and -7, meaning you are going backwards, right? -1, -2, -7. So you have to put this. Why is that? Now what happens? -1 means G, right? The last item. The -2 means O, then L, then A, then I, then D. So it goes in backwards. So we'll get like this. Exactly. It'll, as 478 said, it'll print in the reverse format. But the interesting point is you can make a short, we can cut it short. Since we talk about the first and the last elements, this is the compact representation if you want to reverse something. So make a note of this. So with that, actually, I finish slicing operations. You have to refer the note. I have already uploaded the notes, but you need a little bit of practice and discuss among yourselves and try to understand what exactly mean this. Very important. So those who are going to be working in data science, for example, you are going to work a lot with the data, and this representation is quite useful for you. Of course, this is, useful for everyone, but just for your information, because this representation is quite common. Any questions? You notice that 475 as an interesting question. Can we use -7, -1, 1, right? It can't go like this, because when you add -7, the step is -1 means what? Next item should be -8, right? It should be within the range, and your ranges are wrong, and you should get an error. Can you try it and report to me? Because this, what you have written is, means you start with -7 and you are trying to go up to -1, which you can't do with -1. Yeah, try it and just let me know. Like, no, it's okay. I mean, you trying out, various different ways. But what we discuss is the standard ways of accessing these items. Anyway, thanks for posing questions. I think this is what you should be doing always. Try other possibilities and see which one works, which one not work.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
ඔතන S මේ S එකයි ඉන්ඩෙක්ස් එක රින එක දීලා ස්ටෙප් එකක් දෙන්න ඕනද එතකොට නැත්නම්
මෙහෙම
ඉන්ඩෙක්ස් එක
ඒක හිතන්න ඕනේ මෙහෙමයි. දැන් අත්‍තරම අපි ස්ටාර්ට් එකයි ස්ටොප් එකයි දුන්නාම ස්ටාර්ට් එකේ ඉඳන් ස්ටොප් එකට යනවා කියනවනේ අපි. We are specifying a range from start to stop. So therefore, according to start and stop, we have to specify the step. If the step is 1, you don't have to specify. Step එක නම් පුතේ එක default value දෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි මම කිව්වේ. Beginning, end, and step 1 you don't have to provide. So that's what we have been discussing here.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So just try this. I mean, you don't have to hurry. There will be a lot of tutorials, videos which you can refer. But I gave you the simple idea of slicing, and this the very same idea could be used with the list as well, right? Okay, good. Before we move on, I think we'll mark the attendance, and then we'll proceed. Now, so far we talk about storing data and variables, but all these are temporary. What do you mean by temporary? Meaning that you create it, you use it, but when you close your program, it will not store anywhere because it's stored in a memory and it's temporary. But sometimes we need to store permanently. Like, for example, think about you're playing a game. And what if every day when you close your game and when you start from the beginning, if you have to start from the level 1, right? It's boring, right? Ideally, it should be like you stop at some point and then you should be able to continue from where you have stopped. So which means you need to store them permanently. How do you store them something permanently? You have to create or you have to store them as files, right? So in this part, we are going to discuss how we can store something permanent like a file. So in this part, we talk about file handling in Python. So in file handling, we are going to permanently store data. So this can be done using file class. And when you use a file class, we are going to use several different methods. These methods we could use to create files. So the first method we are going to discuss is called open method. In open method, we will open a file. And remember, when we open a file, we have to specify something called mode. The mode means, are you going to open a file for reading? That means you don't change anything. You are just going to read what is inside. Or you can open for writing. Writing means you are going to create new file. Or you can open a file for appending. Appending means you already have a file and then you are going to add something. So when you open a file, you have to specify which mode you are going to open up a file. It's very important. Second method is, if you open a file, when you finish your work, you should close it. So the close method is also important. Usually in the code, you open the file in the beginning, and before you end the program, you have to close the file. So what might happen if you didn't properly close the file? Sometimes the content in the file get corrupted. So you have to be very careful, right? When you're handling data, especially. Then the next three methods is to read what is inside the file. We can read in different ways. You can use read lines to read all lines into a list of lines, or you can use read line to read a line at a time, or you can just use read to read the whole file. Last one, you can write, right? So write method is to write something in the file. Okay, so let's try to understand this with an example. Okay, so you can notice a simple code where I'm going to write 2 lines. SLTC Research University MePay inside the file, right? And the file that I'm going to create is called test.txt, right? So first of all, let me show you my folder because it's very important you understand that we don't have anything inside this folder now. So I'm actually storing everything inside the code folder. And you can notice that I have 43 files and all files are Python files, right? So I'm going to now open up a new file. I'm going to say new file. And with this new file, I'm going to create a file in this folder, right? So let's type the command. So we will say file, which is a variable we use the file class. And the open method, we will specify the file name. I'm going to say test.txt file, and I will open for writing. So that's what we have W here. And when you open, remember to close. So therefore, I will type close as well. So you open a file for writing and you will close it. Next, I will write something inside the file. So I will first write file.write. And you can write it as a string value. So I will say SLTC research I will just use it. This is not the correct one, but I will just for to understand how it works. I'll type like this. Now let me save this file, save in the same folder as we save other files. This is my program number 44. Program number 44, right? Let me run first, and then you will notice that the file will be created. Currently, you can notice that I have 44 files, and you don't see any text files inside, right? Okay. So let me run this, run module. When I run it, and if you go inside, now you can see a text file. Let me double click and open and show you what is inside. I will double click, and you will notice that I have written 2 lines, but it is printed as a single line. There's a reason for this, because when you write, you have to tell to move it to the next line. To make it a correct way, what we need to do is we have to update the code a bit. So let me show you how to properly do that. So remember that when you type something, right, at the end, always type /n. The slash and n we call the special characters, or we sometimes call escape characters. /n meaning a new line. So what this means is after this SLTC Research University, MSY, we add a new line character. So therefore it will go to the next slide. So that's what we do, right? Okay. Again, let me run one more time. You can remove this, or otherwise it'll, if you have W, it'll override this one. So let me rerun. And this time what will happen is it'll override this one, whatever the content will be overwritten. When you double click it, you will notice now. Can you notice now? Now it is properly stored inside a file. Yes, /it. Okay, so that's how we create files. Let's go back to the note again. So it's very simple idea. You use open method, you provide the text file, you provide the mode, and then you, whatever you want to write, you can use write methods. But one thing you have to note, at the end of what you want to write, you have to add /n. /n stand for new line character. Right, next one. Append. Append means if you already have a file, you want to add new content. So same file we are going to open, but this time we are adding 2 more lines to the existing one. So I'm going to use the same code, but I'm going to modify it a bit, right? I'm going to use the same code. Let me save it as 45. But this time I'm going to say append. And remember, we have to use /n, Paduka, and then we'll say Sri Lanka. Right. Now let me rerun. Let me rerun. I'm going to run again, but this time we say appending. So now can you tell me what is inside? What is inside? If you double click it and see, you can notice we already had Research University and MePay. We have added 2 more lines. We have added 2 more lines. This is called appending, right? Okay, the last one before, since we don't have time, let me quickly go through this and let me finish for today. Right? Reading. Reading will be slightly different. We'll use the same code to read. Let me save as 46. We don't need right ones. We'll remove, and this should be R. Right. When you're printing, there are different techniques we could use. So in this one, what we do is we use a for loop. So when we use a for loop, it's like for, and we can go through line at a time. So that's what it means. So you go through line at a time, and then you can print line. So if I run this, look what happens. So if I run this, you can notice it will print the four lines. But there's a problem. What is the problem? There's a space. The reason for this is, if you look at the help print, when you're printing something with the print function, notice that at the end, remember we use end. I explained this earlier as well. End is always /n. Now remember, when we save the file, we put a /n. We have another /n, which means it will add a extra line. Therefore, we need to modify this if you want to properly print this. So to properly print this, we will have to modify n. We have to say it's empty. So if you do this, now you will notice that the file is printed properly. Right. Just to summarize what we discussed today, right? In the first part, we discussed lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. We also discussed about slicing. And finally, we discuss file handling. Right. What we discuss in the file handling is there are three modes: R for reading, W for writing, A is appending. So I have given you three small files where how this could be used. Time's up, guys. So therefore, I have to stop at this point. If we didn't get any extra, this will be our last session.